Sejam bem-vindos e bem-vindas ao evento.
Welcome to the Biomar event, A Legacy for Humanity. This event seeks to present the extent, connectivity, and importance of the ocean and the species and ecosystems that drive the projects Albatroz, Baleia Jubarte, Vivo, Golfinho Rotador, and Meros do Brazil, which will present their new strategic planning in line with the Ocean Decade, 2021-2030. The objective of this event is to present the extent, connectivity, and importance of the ocean and its species and ecosystems that move the projects Albatroz, Baleia Jubarte, Vivo, Golfinho Rotador, and Meros do Brazil. And I'll explain some parts so our event can work properly. Please select the desired language in the interpretation button, this one here, this little globe, and then you can choose the language that you want to listen to. If you want to listen to the program in English or in Portuguese, we have simultaneous interpreting. We'll also have some interaction moments, so you'll get links on the chat. So it is very important to us that you contribute and that you bring information. These moments will happen in the Mentimeter, and we'll be able to hear you during your presentation. So it's very important that you participate. If you wanna, you can use the QR code or the code. We'll put it in the chat also, so you can access the platform, so you can go in and we'll ask some questions. The first one is, what kind of ocean would you like to see in the next decade? It is very important to hear from you. And the second question is, in one word, how do you want the ocean to be after this decade? So we'd love to have your participation during our event. Another important information is about the Q&A. At the end of our presentation, we'll have a Q&A moment. But in order to do that, we'll use the Q&A tool. So this is the button with two balloons. You click there and you enter your question. And we'll love to answer your question at the end of the event. Finally, we'll also have send you a link so you can register that you came to or that you participated. It's very important that you do that. Sometimes through this tool, the person uses another name, so we don't know who joined. So our tool to know who participated and that was here, so you can get a certificate and also to communicate with you after the event. So we'll do that through this form that we send on the chat. Throughout the event, we'll inform this again, but this is very important. So you can use the Q&A tool to ask questions, and you can also register your participation through the forms, and also in the Mentimeter, we can get your contribution for the event. And at the end, we'll read everything that you send. So now, please welcome Jonas Rodrigues Leite, President of Meros do Brasil Institute and coordinator of the Meros do Brasil project in Rio de Janeiro, and also Gregorio da Cruz Araújo Maciel, Manager of Reforestation and Environmental Projects at Petrobras, and Senior Researcher at the Brazilian Center for International Relations. Welcome. Hello, Elise and Gregorio. On behalf of Biomar, good morning to you all. Let's have an amazing event. And let's hope the event goes really well for everyone. It is an honor to open such an important event for the ocean. This is a parallel event of the ocean event that is happening now in Lisbon. This conference is really important at this moment because the world is trying to solve many important problems of our society. And also, this is the beginning of the decade of the ocean in sustainability. So now I'll give the floor to Gregorio. Good morning, Jonas. Good morning, everyone that are connected with us. It is a pleasure to be a part of this panel on behalf of Petrobras. This is an inspiring conversation on how to promote the conservation of oceans. And the background of this conversation is to show that it's necessary to have a lot of changes, either ecological or cultural, that will shape the human behavior towards a more healthy, towards a healthier ocean. So have better ecosystem services and our societies will be more prosper. So that's our background. We want to show this virtuous cycle and the construction thereof will demand a sustainability journey where everyone has to participate, especially institutions. Petrobras believes that and recognizes their responsibility and commitment to conserve the ocean. And of course, the ocean is our home, and because of the ocean, uh, it's in the ocean is part of Petrobras' uh, personality and work. So our culture involves innovation and sustainability. Petrobras is a leader today in oil and gas in deep waters. It has many records today and the second biggest company in the world that gets its wealth from the ocean and one of the companies that most invest in conserving the oceans. This trajectory, if I can say so, was only possible because it has only been a negotiable value for the company to develop all of its activities sustainably, respecting the ocean and biodiversity. Or sustainable action shows through our daily actions and also the investments that we do. So we have partners like the Biomar Network to conserve the oceans. The investment in biodiversity in the oceans happened since the 80s. And in 40 decades, the investment and the our actions matured and it consolidated in a structured project. And on our journey, the Biomar Network, who we'll discuss today, was the basis because it was one of the pillars of our social environmental work. It pushes us to have more ambitious actions thinking of sustainability. So I'd like to share some numbers of the things we've done with the Biomar Network and that show a very positive outcome. In our 15 years, it, it worked in 12 states in Brazil, in 65 cities and the island of Fernando de Noronha. The project monitored and conserved and had research on 80 species. And also it produced more 720 scientific papers. And also we can measure the effectivity of our work. We have a robust methodology that takes into account all the aspects of our projects. And it shows that every R1 that we invest, it is converted into R8 in benefits for society and environment. So we have a commitment with Biomar. Until 2024, we will invest 50 million to support the projects that we'll show today. That seeks to have healthier and cleaner ocean. and more productive one. So the Biomar Network, together with Petrobras, created this strategic um, project that has to do with the ocean decade and the 2030 uh, goals of the UN. So it has to do with raising awareness, conservation, and sustainability. They really summarize what we believe: the knowledge, social transformation, and conservation that will result in social environmental changes that we need and that are measurable, that need to be implemented to conserve the biodiversity in the ocean. Finally, I'd like to reaffirm our commitment of Petrobras with sustainability, because we understand our role in the economy and also in the environment. So we'll make the effort to towards a more sustainable ocean. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gregorio and Jonas. Now I'd like to invite to talk about the Biomar Network. I'll invite Maíra Borgonha, who is an oceanographer and has a master's in development and environment. She has been a general manager of the Meros do Brasil project since 2012. She works in the conservation of marine biodiversity and endangered fauna, especially groupers. Welcome, Maíra. Maíra. Hello. Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm talking from Lisbon, from the Parque das Nações, the third day of the Ocean Conference in 2022. I'd like to thank everyone that came here today, Petrobras, or sponsors, um, the Biomar Network, and also all the teams that are here, and everyone that are interested in getting to know this work. That is not something that started today. As Gregorio mentioned, the network is 15 years old now. And ahead of us, it can see it will have the challenge to look at the ocean into the next decade and have more commitments to its improvement. So the Biomar Network is committed to the ocean. It has been 15 years, and today's event would like to show you our commitments with the ocean's conservation. So who we are. The Marine Biodiversity Conservation Network, rated Biomar, is made up of 5 projects sponsored by Petrobras through the Petrobras Social Environmental Program with a focus on ocean conservation. We have the Albatroz, Baleia Jubarte, Vivo, Golfinho Rotador and Meros, the Brazil projects. So this is our background. It was created in 2007 and is a result of the dialogue between many sectors of society, between, for example, Petrobras, the Ministry of the Environment, the Chico Mendes Institute for Biodiversity Conservation, and sponsored projects to strengthen marine conservation through the formation of a network. That's how the Biomar Network came to life. Well, the Biomar Network in numbers, it is present in 13 Brazilian states: Pará, Ceará, Rio Grande do Norte, Pernambuco, Alagoas, Sergipe, Bahia, Espírito Santo, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, Paraná, Santa Catarina, and Rio Grande do Sul. In the past 10 years, more than 9 million people were faced more environmental awareness and had education activities. We produced over 720 technical and scientific publications, and we had 6 national action plans that were touched by this network. Also, more than 2,230 national international forums and more than 7,670 media articles were published through our network. And what is our mission? It is a network that acts collaboratively, optimizes efforts, investments, contributes in a relevant way to a better known, healthier, biodiversity, rich, resilient, and productive ocean. And to do that, we have a plan that goes from 2021 to 2030 and is directly connected to the goals of the ocean's decade. So we try to ensure that the actions of Petrobras and the projects that make up the network fulfill a collective mission and seek a common vision of the future, representing a commitment of these institutions to achieve effective results for the conservation in a joint and collaborative manner. Also, try to ensure the long-term effectiveness of actions, converging efforts to achieve the goals of the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And we are doing that in person and also online through 6 axes of action that are interrelated and also 2 transversal axes. So today, we bring to you the 6 axes that the projects of the Biomar Network propose that we should work on in the next decade: knowledge, socioeconomics, awareness, conservation, public policy, and social impact. Thank you, Maíra. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye. Enjoy Lisbon. Now, I'll invite to talk about the knowledge access, Flávio Lima. He's a biologist, a PhD in animal behavior, and professor of the State University of Rio Grande do Norte. Welcome, Flávio. Hello, Elise. Morning, afternoon, or evening to everyone around the globe. I'm very glad to be here today. More than to bring the strategic planning of the Biomar Network, but also alerting everyone about the matters of such an important moment of the ocean's decade. As we have presented, as has been presented by Maíra before, the Biomar Network that is now 15 years old. It is structured by through strategic planning, through the projects that are sponsored by Petrobras, through the social environmental program of Petrobras, but they have a joint planning. And especially in this new cycle of the next 10 years from 2021 to 2030, regarding knowledge, we'll see in the next slide that this axis has as the main goal to generate knowledge with technical and scientific production, with a direct use in conservation, aimed at develop. So all the scientific production it has to have a direct use in the conservation, aiming at developing solutions and sharing information with Petrobras, but also with society. So the goal of this axis is very relevant, especially because we are directly connected to the objectives of the ocean decade, because we need to have more known oceans. Now you see the 3 fronts of action, which are the Biomar projects and their strategic planning, since they do research and monitoring actions, which is very important because they are research and monitoring of parameters and data that are robust and that show their application towards conservation. Also, scientific dissemination that is done through the actions of the projects and the network as a whole, especially uh, with information systems. So the scientific dissemination can be more ordered and organized so the society can have more access to knowledge and can also use it in a more adequate manner. And a very important aspect also is the ecosystem services valuation. It is a very important focus and common to all the projects in the Biomar network to bring actions that will result in data to be that will enable us to value our ecosystem services. And that will allow us to contribute towards other objectives and access that will be presented soon, but also towards public policies related to knowledge and the ecosystem services valuations. Here, we have some important aspects. We have to mention indicators and or strategic planning of the Biomar network. We work with some indicators for each axis, especially for knowledge. We work with two indicators. The first one is the number of publications applied to the conservation specifically, and that's very important. If you noticed before, as Maíra and Gregorio said, on the last cycles of the Biomar cycles, which go back 15 years, papers were published, scientific papers were published in articles and books, manuals, which are very important because they enable the creation of methodologies for other projects. And as a whole, there were more than 700 scientific products. And that's very relevant when we think of scientific dissemination on the ocean, on the species and ecosystems. That are the focus of the actions of our network. The applicability is huge. All of these publications are systematized and available in the websites of all the projects. So we invite you to visit the websites so you can see the development of the activities there. One very important aspect regarding knowledge is the training of human resources. The Biomar projects
The Biomar Network
directly and
projects in a very
intensively through
intense
specific
way
programs of
through internship
internship
programs,
and
volunteering
voluntary
programs,
work, support to
and all
visiting
that.
scholars. They contributed immensely in Brazil and outside of Brazil to train researchers in the field
With
of
the research
biodiversity
in
and
terms
marine
of
biodiversity
marine
and
biodiversity
ocean
and ocean
conservation.
conservation.
It's very important to say that many project
It's very
coordinators,
important to
researchers,
highlight that many
professors
investigators,
uh,
university
in
professors in
Brazil and in
Brazil,
the world currently They went through these programs. They were interns. Even myself, today I'm constitutional manager of the Golfinho Rotador project, but I was the first intern there in the 90s. Another indicator that is important for this axis
quantificação em números de citações de literatura científica
is the
produzida
numbers of literature that has been produced through Biomar members. And that is very relevant to us. We can measure then how much we have in scientific papers published and cited by other papers. And also very relevant is the citation of this literature in public policies, documents, and also environmental management documents, either to preserve the fauna, endangered fauna, or action plans, propositions of conservation units in a very integrated way. The Biomar Network provide these institutions and scenarios a very good amount of publications. So in this way, this access is very relevant because, as I said, it's connected directly to the goal of the ocean decade to have a better known ocean. Now I will say goodbye. Let's continue with our presentation. And now, Lizzie, you.
Thank you, Flavio, so much for this such an important presentation. There are a lot of comments in the chat. People are sending emojis on the chat as well. I'm really glad that you guys are liking. Now we're going to go for the socioeconomics axis, and I'm going to invite Jonas Rodrigues Leite. He's a PhD in environmental oceanography, president of the Brazil Grouper Institute, and executive manager of the Brazil Grouper project. The floor is yours, Jonas. Well, hi, Lizzie. Hello, everybody, once more. Continuing with the presentation of the strategic planning of the Biomar Network, I'm here to talk about the second axis. It's about the socioeconomics of marine and coastal resources, looking for transitions to the more sustainable use of these resources. We know that the current use of such resources are inadequate, and they are degrading the marine environment, finally reaching the current situation. In order to reverse this tendency, it's fundamental that the socioeconomics of marine resources pass through a profound transition in all scales. So that's why our focus here is to incentive sustainable initiatives and enterprises that minimize the negative impacts over the environment and its resources, especially when talking about tourism and fishing. Last slide, please. We're going to identify, support business enterprises that generate social and economical benefits and the environment at least, because I think that the social impact and the conscientization and the raising awareness of all areas is necessary to incentive prosperity and strengthening of these organizations that seek small impacts on the ocean environment. It's really important the sustainable use of the resources of the area, both in individual and collective scale, but we know this start with individuals. Second front is in sustainable initiatives that reach the biggest number of people possible, the sustainable use of these resources. And the third is enterprises that minimize impacts, reducing the consumption of such resources in large scale. As Flavio mentioned, Biomar network projects have been developing actions in all the axes that are being presented here today. But for the next decade, we're aiming to concentrate efforts in I'm going to name some examples here, like the Albatroz project, which for several years have been reducing the captivity of the albatrosses, and at the same time are transforming the fishermen that historically have contact with these species. All the humpback whale, the grouper projects are working on sustainable tourism in Brazil, both for species and environments and the whole environment chain. These are only a few examples of actions that the Biomar Network has been developing, and it's going to intensify over the next decade. The main indicator for this axis are the number and the quality of the initiatives of reduction of social impacts. We believe that the transition for more sustainable activities will lead to an improvement in the state of the conservation of the ocean, both in Brazil and globally. That's it.
Obrigada, Jonas. Obrigada
Thank you,
pela.
Lizzie. Thank you, Jonas, for your presentation of this socioeconomic axis. Now, I'm gonna invite Flavia Gilbert to present the awareness axis. She's a PhD in biological oceanography. She's the director of Instituto Coral Vivo and general coordinator of Coral Vivo project. You're most welcome, Flavia. Good morning, everybody. It's a huge pleasure to be here with you guys to present our work and our prediction for the next 10 years. I'm here to talk about the awareness axis of the Biomar project. We aim to promote a change of behavior associated to raising awareness of marine conservation, the sustainable use of its resources. We believe that this would bring benefits to the ocean and for the environment as a whole, and for other social actors as well. Our action focus is aligned with ODS number 4, which is talks about the quality of the education. Starting from this document, Biomar Networks tries to organize educational actions focusing on quality, and we are aiming to formate the audience, empowering people based on human rights principles and the development of sustainable lifestyle, promoting peace culture, global citizenship, and diversity around the world, and the contribution of culture for sustainable development. We understand that we can raise awareness starting from the action and make society closer to marine life. Starting from this point, we can think about improvements, and our objective with awareness is to make people understand the ocean, know the ocean, and get to know what solutions we can bring to this environment. For example, enterprises that can change their attitude and minimize their impacts. The Biomar Network should bring relevant contributions to the increasing of awareness and conservation, and improve decisions on and the creation of public policies. What are the best practices of consumption, friendly actions towards the environment and conservation services? The main indicator for this axis are social polls, public opinion poll surveys about how predetermined groups see marine conservation. Here are some examples inspired by this image that you guys can see here. I think it's very difficult to talk about something that we can't see, because in the ocean we only see the ocean through pictures. It's a very complex activity to scuba dive and perceive all the difficulties and the problems of developing some work inside the ocean. So through awareness, we try to get the public closer to the ocean the most as we can. The main action focus of these axes are educating the public, like other people commented before. Biomar Network works with audience that are really important, because they're going to multiply knowledge, they're going to multiply information, like educators, tour guides, fishermen, and people directly connected to the ocean. So the Biomar Network has been working to educate this audience, educating, giving training to teachers, to tour guides, so they can conduct tours in conservation areas, tourism using boats, and how they can reduce the impact that may occur in the ocean through these activities. Training young leaders that I believe that other colleagues here are going to talk about here, but there is a network of young people in the Biomar Network that are working for the conservation of the ocean, and they are engaged with the Biomar Network for a couple of years now, training students, educating students, as Flavio said, university students, whether it's for internship programs or research programs. It's a way to make this public more aware, and also workshops, communication workshops for the press that educate about the marine conservation. This is the media that's going to take the information about the ocean to the general public. So it's important to be aligned and close to this press group in order to take information in the best way possible to society. Biomar Network has also been investing in visitor centers and external activities. We have to use our creativity to sensibilize people, where our objective is to make people scuba dive and actually see what's happening inside the ocean, how the ecosystem is recovering, how the organisms are dealing with the impacts, and what we can do about it. So in these environments that I mentioned before, like exhibitions, visitor centers, external activities, whether they are in schools or any other places, the network applies technological tools and creativity to engage the public. Some examples are publishing child's books, using apps, storytelling, producing videos, audiovisual resources in general. And these are the moments where you can engage the public with the current situation of the oceans. And we try to raise awareness for the oceanic culture. This is showing the importance of the ocean, that it's our garden, and we are trying to engage in people, and that it's important for everybody to get to know it so we can conserve it. And it's important to bring this oceanic culture to the routine of people, so they can understand the influence of the ocean on our routines, and we can access knowledge about the ocean. That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Flavia. very relevant access for our work. Now let's talk about the conservation access. I'm going to invite Tatiana Neves, who is the general coordinator of the Albatroz project. She's a biologist and holds a master's in biological oceanography and a specialist in birds. Be most welcome, Tatiana.
Tatiana já está entrando, só um minutinho. Olá, que bom, Tatiana, seja bem-vinda.
Tatiana, be very welcome, Tatiana. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here. Such an important conference and this paramount moment in our lives. I'm here to present the conservation access of this incredible project, which touches our hearts deeply because all these projects were born from a fundamental necessity to conserve the ocean and its biodiversity. When we constructed the strategic planning, we decided that this conservation access inside the Biomar Network aims to promote the conservation of the biodiversity, focusing on the marine and coastal species and environments. It's really important to emphasize that because at first glance, when you look at the Biomar Network, that spiny dolphin, humpback whale, and albatross projects, at first glance, the public may be misled that we work for the conservation of these species of the dolphin, the whale, and albatrosses, but that's not quite our objective. Of course, we work with these, but we have a much more holistic approach encompassing not only the species, but also the marine and coastal environment in which they dwell, encompassing also a diversity of species that also living in this environment. Those are iconic species that brings the attention for the promotion of the conservation of the marine environment as a whole. Coral Vivo project, for example, works in a network with 14 networks that aim to have a diversified approach over several aspects of the environment, having an ecosystemic vision and the global management of such environments. This is really important to highlight about our conservation actions. We also work with the conservation of species in a measurable way. This is not easy, but we have to measure our impact, our positive impact over the conservation in that region, so as to identify possible improvements as well, the environments where we can see a measurable improvement, and therefore showing in a better way to society the effectivity of our work. Biomar Network conservation work is not only focused only on the conservation of species and coastal and marine environments. We're also working with the conservation, as Flavio mentioned before, in the conservation of the ecosystemic services provided by these species and these ecosystems. This encompasses something bigger, the species, the environment, and the human activities related to this cohort that is being evaluated. So like Gregorio mentioned, the Biomar Network protected during the last cycles 88 species. And as Maíra mentioned, also reached more than 9 million people. It's a very complex, very complete work. Next slide, please. So how can we measure our impact? How do you know over time that our work has been reaching positive results? And how can we identify the opportunities for improvement, and how we can see aspects, what we can do to improve our work and influence public policies. We studied several KPIs when we started the project, and the ocean health KPI was the one chosen because we can make it can be applied globally or regionally or even locally. Therefore, making this KPI the most appropriate to our reality. The parameters used by the ocean health KPI are very affiliated to the Biomar network, and such can be adapted to each region and realities in where the Biomar network is present. The Ocean Health Index includes 10 indicators, 10 important indicators. The first one is biodiversity, including the native marine species and the key environments. See how they're aligned with the objectives of the network. The second important aspects are clean water, and they measure pollution and contamination by plastic, which is one of the most important topics that humanity has to deal right now, and that's being discussed in a large scale in Lisbon this week. Food supply, also for fisheries and mariculture. Approaching opportunities for artisanal fisheries, where we expect to see an improvement over the next 10 years, so as this activity can generate more revenue and better quality of life for the people involved. Then coastal culture and economy for the populations that live from the sea and by the sea, but all the communities, not only fisher people, but all the communities that are integrated to marine environment. Tourism recreation that Flavia approached greatly is one of the most affiliated topics of that Biomar network. We promote site whales tourism, and we try to engage the public and make people belong to the species, and like this spinning dolphin through the site of the spinning dolphin in Fernando de Noronha. So for tourism, these people, they feel closer to these iconic species. Therefore, identifying with them and promoting the conservation of this species. Protection of the coast and carbon trapping by the ocean, which are very important, and natural products by the oceans are also affiliated to the Biomar network, and it's also related to the Ocean Health Index. The Ocean Health Index started in 2012, but this was recently adopted by the Biomar network, and it's a challenge for us to use this index to show the effectivity, the performance of our work, so as we can show society that the investment they're making in our project is worth it. As Gregorio mentioned before, there is a study showing how much money is reverted to society for each dollar invested. It's important that we can show this return for society, for our partners in general. It's an urgent challenge, and it's one of the highlights of our strategic planning, which we are very proud to participate. And then you can use the case study, you can follow up the case study of the Biomar network. This index easily accessible on the internet. There are courses, published material, and all sorts of material about this index. And you can also get to know how the Biomar Ocean Health Index is going on through the reports that we publish along the next decade. Follow our social media, please, and Petrobras's social media as well, because we're going to announce the strategic planning report there. So as you can follow us, please stay tuned.
Obrigada, Tatiana, muito bom. A gente acabou de colocar lá no chat, gente, todas as redes sociais dos projetos da Rede Biomar. Então aproveitem para seguir lá no Instagram e saber de todas as informações. Então agora a gente vai convidar.
So now we'll invite Eduardo Camargo, the general director of the project. There is some microphone open, apart from mine. All right. So Eduardo Camargo, the general coordinator of this project, and the president of the Baleia Jubarte project, and he's a chemical engineer and a master's in hydraulic engineering and sanitation. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with this very select group of friends and partners fighting for conservation. I'll discuss another axis of our work, but I also hope that we can inspire each one of you so you can copy and be inspired by this network work here. So I hope we can contribute even more for conservation. And the axis that I'll discuss is public policy, which sometimes is not really seen by people, is not really published or publicized. So this axis involves everything in the work, because all the scientific knowledge that we generate and the public that we touch, how do we do that to cause conservation? We're talking about marine conservation. There is no owner to the ocean, so public policy is very important so it can guarantee the effectiveness of the conservation. So what we do is to gather knowledge, experience, and partnerships to promote public policies so they are more effective for conservation, especially in Brazil, where our policies are so confusing or complex, and where environmental issues are not really valued by our politicians. So we give information, we subsidize the new bills, we really promote everything that we are looking for, so we get more laws to improve our conservation through public policy. So now I'll show our action focus to be more effective. In conservation, we look for specific legislation to guarantee the biodiversity conservation, like Kati said. For example, the Meros do Brazil action that gathered all the information and knowledge and their ability to influence to get limitation on the fishing of groupers. So now we can see that the species can recover. Another action focus is the sustainable use, especially regarding tourism, which is a very important activity because it generates work, jobs, and money, but there are risks to it. So it's very important to the work of the Rotador project, because it legislate on the approximation to the animals. So we have balance there. We can protect the species and also generate income. Another action focus is the synergies of the PAN, the national action plans, and we have one to conserve for the conservation of biodiversity. So all the Biomar Network stakeholders participate in these plans. They get together with work groups to define actions and goals, and many actions are implemented by us. And one successful example is the Albatroz project, because in their action plan, everyone participates to coordinate the plan. It's a very big management work. And through that work, we impacted the international legislation on the Albatroz capture. Another action focus is the national protected areas like national parks, conservation areas. All the marine areas protected are very important. That helps conservation in the entire world. So our network has subsidized that. And one example is the Coral Vivo project that in the south of the state of Bahia participates in councils of the cities to help increase population engagement and create strategies to implement the plan. And they contribute to the monitoring of corals in these units. It is an effective participation that contributes to the result because we still have very precarious places and policies regarding that. So we help in that regard. All the stakeholders of our network participate in it. And we also have international programs because we're talking about one and only ocean, even though they have different names in different places. At heart, they're only one ocean. So we need to act in an integrated manner towards conservation. That's why we also work on international agreements for international fishing, for example, the climate agreements, because we know the impact of climate change, and it's very important for marine conservation. So our entire network participate in different forums, like the Baleia Jubarte project that participates in the Whales International Committee, and they work with the Brazilian Commission in this forum, providing information and contributing to stop the whale hunting in the entire world. So these are our 5 action focus that we prioritize to contribute for our marine conservation to be more effective. Now I'll show you how we can measure that. How can we measure if our efforts are getting results? So we count the number of participations in the international and national committees, how many times the Biomar Network participates in the forums and the work groups, and supporting the conservation actions. And also the actions implemented by the Biomar Network. Many of the actions that are provided for in the national action plans are made by the Biomar Network, like the protection of the humpback whales in Brazil. That is implemented by the Biomar Network. So we use those 2 indexes to measure the implementation of public policies. And that's how we contribute for an evolution in our country, so our policies really protect our biodiversity. I really hope that I contributed for your knowledge about the subject. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Eduardo, and your explanation. Some people mentioned how complex the public policies are and how you can influence this entire process. It's great to hear your contributions and from all those projects. Now we'll go to another axis, which is social impact. And to discuss that, we'll invite Ana Paula Marques, who has a master's in management with a focus on social responsibility. She has been working in the reforestation and environmental projects area of Petrobras since 2015, focusing on the marine conservation projects, and participates in the Biomar Network working group. Welcome, Ana Paula. Thank you so much. As Eduardo mentioned, it is a pleasure to be here with this group all of the Biomar's people. I'm in the Biomar working group, such as other colleagues that worked a lot and couldn't be here today. I'm representing Petrobras, that in addition to sponsoring the projects, also participates in the network. I'll present the social impact axis that aims to promote social inclusion in addition to positive and measurable social environmental impact. This axis bases on a constant search for the social return of the project and more clarity on the impacts generated by the projects. And that's why we need indicators, and that's why we need everything to be measurable, which is a challenge, as Tatiana mentioned. And the objective to get there is expanding through the projects the access to traditional coastal communities. And so they understand the benefits of marine conservation. So it can contribute to understand environmental degradation that comes from some economic activities. As action focus, we have the development of leaderships. So we work with adults and young people in the communities, actions to empower those people and to have the or young people as leaders. So they have to be more aware of the environmental and issues of their they live, so they can fight for more equality, inclusion, and development in terms of policies. And of course, personally, we see the results in their self-esteem because they get more opportunities. Many of those people come from poor communities, but they really graduate college and they are hired by the Biomar projects or other projects that are very relevant. The other action focus are income generation, so it can create decent work and alternative income generation possibilities, skill development for their professions, for the young and adult population, and all of the professionals that are in the area. So it can have better added value of their products for the ones that produce something. All of these action focus, they really relate to the UN SDGs. The three of them, most specifically, like gender equality, decent work, and reduced inequalities. As indicators, we have two of them. The people involved, engaged in the projects, and the other ones relating to the people impacted by the leadership development and professional training actions that we have. And as Tatiana mentioned, it is a big challenge, and we should really highlight this, the challenge to measure everything that we do, because we need to know the impact that we generate and to understand the changes that we are promoting when we think of the social and environmental issues that we face. Here we have some examples, some colleagues mentioned, but through a different perspective, more related to their axis. But I have the Jovemar event that is connected to the development of leadership. These young people come from different parts of Brazil that come from the 5 projects that are sponsored. And their actions are directed to conserve the oceans, but they also go through the empowerment aspects of it, the inclusion of the local community where the projects are based. Well, it's a beautiful action. They have frequent meetings online and in person, and the objectives are defined by them. They themselves create what they decide what they will focus on. Here you have some inclusion actions. These are from Coral Vivo. In the left picture, you see the project in the indigenous community. On top, you'll see inclusion of women in science. So we really incentivize the participation of women in our research groups. We also have the Golfinho Rotador action that really train the people of Fernando de Noronha and that work in tourism. And it has been proven that their income increased, which is great. And this beautiful picture below of a humpback whale shows the work that they do also with sustainable tourism in whale watching. This is just a small view, a small perspective of the actions of the projects that have been implemented so far, and we really intend to expand in the next 10 years. Finally, I'd like to say that this dimension is very important for Petrobras. Our environmental project today has 50 projects, 25 environmental and 25 social projects, but they all are also related to the social development. And it is a very important access for our projects and the Biomar network. And well, it is not possible to talk about environmental transformation without thinking of our social aspect of it. So thank you very much. Thank you, Ana. It's very exciting to see these people in the pictures. So I was asking on the chat if there was someone in the pictures that is also here. Maybe someone from the Biomar collective, if they are participating here. I really wanted to see this interaction, to see that the people are really engaged. Now, to finish our event, I'll invite Jonas to sum up. We are just finishing the presentations, but we'll go to another moment to show what you brought as an interaction in the Mentimeter. So if you haven't contributed so far, please do it, because I'll bring it here soon. Now, Jonas, you have the floor. Hello, Elise. So I'd like to sum up now. This is just a summary of our strategic planning of the Biomar network for the next decade, and then we'll open the Q&A questions, the questions that they brought during our presentations. So I'd like to remember the 4 changes that we expect in the next decade. The first is that the public will prefer any attitudes and places that are aligned with marine conservation and biodiversity, and also a society with more sustainable actions. Third place, more knowledge about it in our public policies, so we have more sustainable actions from our governments. And in fourth place, more companies that use our oceans and sea. We hope they use we hope they implement actions that have less negative impact on our oceans. We really hope these changes in society in the future. We hope society does not pose a threat to marine conservation. So now Elise will show the results of our interaction in our chat, and then we'll bring the other speakers so we can answer questions from the audience. Let me open the presentation here. These are the last few seconds for those that haven't participated yet. We really want to see your participation. So you can copy your QR code, and then we can show how you contributed. So my first question was, what kind of ocean would you like to see in the next decade? So we saw clean and sustainable, live, sustainable, diversity rich. So every time I'm at the beach and I find trash, I take it to a trash can, which is beautiful because the changes can also happen if we also are held responsible for the change. So here a more balanced ocean, one ocean full of whales. So it's great for the Baleia Jubarte project people. More sustainable, rich and diverse ocean, especially regarding endangered species. So we can, of course, we can think here how Biomar is really focusing on saving these species. Oh, here an ocean without pollution, without plastic, and with more biodiversity. An ocean that really works as a hub of initiatives that helps the biodiversity and conservation. And here I would like the Brazilian society would turn to the ocean and had a knowledge of the importance of the 8,500 kilometers of coast that we have for the climate balance. An ocean with more conserved ecosystems. So we have 95 people here and 19 contributions. So I want to see you here. But we have very relevant contributions, but I'd like to see more people writing here because this will go to a report. So please contribute. And finally, our second question. Just one, just 1 second. So in one word, how would you like the ocean to be after this decade? So the biggest words are the ones that were more frequent. So what we saw is a more protected, clean, and conserved ocean. That's what we are aiming at. And well, now we have the Q&A moment. That's very important. For those that haven't still sent a question, you can go to the Q&A tool here on Zoom and send more questions because we'll start answering the questions. As a host, I'll invite Jonas to ask the Q&A questions, but I'll also invite all of the speakers today from this project to answer the questions, and I hope we have a very interesting environment now. Just 1 minute so we can ping all of the speakers so they can show in our screen, so they can open their cameras. Let's print screen this moment because it's very exciting to see everyone on the screen able to talk and have this amazing conversation. It's great, everyone is together now on the screen. So for those that haven't still asked their questions, please do in our Q&A tool. Elise, you can tell me when everything's okay to start. Oh, we can start now. All right, so first question that's directed to Flavio of the Golfinho Rotador. So the practice of Biomar, is there a relation between the species that are studied? Are the projects of the Biomar network, are they integrated? Oh, that's the essence of our project. They really do integrated research, and that can be seen through technical and scientific publications. Frequently, we have a re-editing of some publications. For example, 2017, we had research on tourism by the Biomar Network and the conservation of marine biodiversity and ecosystems. And the articles that it encompassed came from different places. We worked with Baleia Jubarte and Golfinho Rotador, and they developed studies about the acoustics of dolphins and whales. In a series of papers, there was a PhD, a joint PhD about it, uh, related to the ocean sounds and the whale sounds and the acoustic impacts on the studied species. There are manuals and technical products related to different species that are involved in the projects, and also manuals on the conservation of the oceans. Also books on practices and strategies to towards sustainability and conservation based on all of the studies made by the projects. We also have technical projects that are on our websites, and they relate to the mitigation of the impact of tourism of the on the species and the ecosystems. So this question is very interesting because it allows us to show how integrated our work is, how we work jointly. And that represents the important role of our network to create scientific publications that really meet the scientific demands of society. So this question makes me really glad because I can show that. And I could give you a lot of examples and many aspects of how integrated we are, but I would like to highlight here the participation of our audience and say that this integration in the knowledge access, it is really our basis or foundation. Thank you, Flavio. Now the second question is to Flavia of Coral Vivo. So they say an important action of raising awareness of people has also been the actions of cleaning of beaches and rivers. So how the Biomar network works with this kind of action. Yeah, I'd love to mention that before. I didn't mention the cleaning of the beaches, but there are many actions related to awareness. But it's great that we see this question now because we can talk about it. It's an important action that we've had. It's been some years since 2018. We've been working in a more broad way, in a broader way. So we have really joint action. We have some prep work. We do this beach cleaning in the Beach Cleaning World Day. It's the third Saturday of September. But of course, some groups have to adapt. And we try to do a national action with the Biomar projects and also partners that want to be engaged. So we have a preparation for the voluntaries that want to work in their areas. So we really promote people engagement, leadership development. And then people developing their regions, those actions, and they bring more people to work with them. On the very day of the action, it is a day of awareness because we understand that even though it is scientifically strict when we think of our waste collection, because we have to do screening, we have to work with a very important form from the Ministry of Environment, and so they have all the results of our projects. But mainly it is a public policy event because it serves for us to show everything that is happening in the ocean and how it can work with those public policies, bodies and organisms of the government. But it is an awareness action, and it's great for everyone that's participating because we are obviously already related to knowledge about the ocean, but when people that are not close to that, when they see the pile of trash on the sand taken from the oceans, they are really shocked, but also impacted. Of course, there's a lot of trash, and I know it's shocking. Some materials are quite dangerous because you see everything. There are some more eccentric material, but there are other materials that can be recycled and reused. But basically, this event shows the problems of consumerism and how much we litter and produce waste, but also what we can do about it. Because we usually think that we throw something in the trash can and we say that we did something about it, because it goes beyond that. Because when we are buying, when we are purchasing, did you think of the material that you were buying, how much that will become waste? So it is a matter of reflection. We have to reflect on what we do. And I've seen a lot of people going there and leaving shocked, really rethinking their habits in their own house, at work, or even with in their family. So it is a great work, and when we see these results. Thank you very much for the question. Well, I would suggest now that if anyone would like to say something, we still have some time. So if you'd like to contribute, even though the question was not asked to you, you can do it, no problem. And would anyone like to comment about the beach cleaning? Yes, I would. I would like to. I know that all the information that we gather in our coast go to the national panel, and it also helps our public policies, because what we notice is that each beach has different material. So the actions implemented the to reduce waste in our beaches and oceans. So even though it's only one day of cleaning, it is impressive, because the next day you go to the beach and it's still very dirty. But this information is very rich for the city halls in the states and the national governments, because they know where the focus should be on. Because of course, sometimes you have more beaches that they get more polluted because of tourism, but in other cases, it's because of fishing. So we gather information on that, so we know what action we should implement. Great, Eduardo. Thank you very much. Now we'll go to the next question that goes to Tatiana from Albatroz. Tatiana, is it possible to say that your work has been contributing to save these species from being endangered? Thank you very much for the question. It's a great question. So we have the opportunity to explain some stuff. We have at least 2 species that are listed. I know that Edward is celebrating now that the humpback whale is not endangered anymore. It went from endangered species to close to endangered. Eduardo, you can explain. No, you can continue. So the albatross went through the same process. It was listed as a vulnerable species, but then it was reclassified as close to endangered species. So these are 2 species that we can mention. But I'd like to take this opportunity to also explain something. What does that mean in terms of work and reevaluation? What is the amount of research and monitoring that we have to do to reclassify marine species? Of course, I use the albatross case because I know it more. The albatross, it reproduces in the Falkland Islands. It's a big colony where they reproduce. And it migrates from that colony to the Brazilian coast. It leaves its nest as after it's a little bigger, and it flies on the ocean, above the ocean, and it stays there for many years, and only 8 years after that, it goes back to the island. Or even some species, they take 11 years to go back. And how you can count that? Will you go after the animal on the sea, on the ocean, to count how many albatrosses are there? To see if there are more or less albatrosses, to see the number, if the population increased or decreased. So it is a big challenge to study these species and understand the the health of these populations and define the conservation status that is really that makes sense. So we have uh, to count these species and the nests in islands, and sometimes they are very difficult to get to. So it's a big effort to get there because we have to have a multi-country effort to be able to count them. So we can create a graph of recovery or of worsening of their numbers. We have to also do satellite monitoring to see where they are and what affects those species, like the albatross. It is an accident capture, or sometimes it is plastic, or the introduction of some species in different places uh, where they shouldn't be, and they prey on the nests. So it is a long-term work. So we can say that a species is not an endangered species anymore, like the humpback whale, and then it goes to close to endangered species. So this change in classification or conservation status, it requires a huge effort and a lot of investment and a lot of time so we can understand how the population really is. I think this question can be discussed by all of the projects. And in relation to the grouper, there is a conflict, a world conflict that the fish is a fauna, but it is also a resource. So one of the biggest challenges of the Meros do Brazil project is to show that the resources are also a fauna. All of the resources that we use, whether fauna or flora, they are part of an ecosystem that's way bigger and it is interconnected. So this is the challenge for Meros do Brazil or for the grouper. So we have to show that it is a very important species in the marine ecosystem, and then people have to understand that even though it's a resource, it has to be taken care of and it needs monitoring. So we couldn't still see this improvement in the grouper population, but we believe that with time, this bigger awareness will come and the species will recover. Who else wants to say something?
Rapidinho, uma pergunta fantástica.
May I contribute a little bit, Dudu? It's a fantastic question and very important. As to the spinning dolphin, that since 2018 was the list of endangered species in Brazil, there were lack of data in relation to the species because there weren't not enough information, data, studies about the species. And the spinning dolphin project and other initiatives in Brazil, we finally saw that the species leaving this category of lack of data in 2018. It was removed from the endangered species list, but also we also raised data related to tourism in Fernando de Noronha archipelago and incidental fishing. So these projects are really important from the generation of a technical scientific knowledge standpoint. we had a lack of data in the past, and after the project, after the project started in for 32 years associated with other initiatives in Brazil, clarified the condition of clarified the conservation condition of the species. And this is a huge improvement in the process of the evaluation of the spinning dolphin in Brazil. Come on, Dudu, that's it. Humpback whale, tell us a little bit about. We're very satisfied about the conditions of the humpback whales because the population recovered very well. It's on low preoccupation list. It's not endangered anymore. I just want to highlight that one of the species is removed from the list. That doesn't mean that the problems end. Before there was a lack of humpback whales, and currently there's a totally new scenario. The population increased from 1,500 to 25,000. But now we have to manage this huge quantity of humpback whales because it's the first time we see like fishing nets and plastic in the ocean. So even if the species is recovering numbers, the challenges of conservation really is forever. I hope more people engage in this fight. Does anybody have any other contributions? Next question is for you, Dudu. On the humpback whale, you mentioned that projects try to participate in groups that form public policies worldwide. Have they influenced national action plans? Give us some examples. The part of the cetaceans, I can mention what Flavio was commenting before. We were talking about a species of cetaceans that is in high danger of extinction. There were very little information worldwide, and people didn't pay much attention to this species because of the lack of information. So we end up directing resources in the last 5 years to survey and diagnose the situation of the species around the Brazilian coast. Therefore, we put this risk in the worldwide debate again, and we received more resources to work on the conservation of this species. So I think there's international policies influence the international treaties and vice versa. International treaties influence our policy making. Tati, can you share a little bit about your action on that? There's a long story about it, yeah. The Spanish speaker colleagues call me the grandmother of the albatrosses because we have been working since the beginning of, we have been working with the agreement to the conservation of the albatrosses since the beginning of the elaboration of the national plan for conservation of albatrosses, which was produced in the year 2000. It was even before the other type of documents. And this albatross plan started from international demand because there was an international plan for the reduction of seabirds, international plan, and this international plan indicated that all the countries were responsible for their own PANs, PANs, and albatross PAN was directed or influenced by this international initiative. And after that, we joined the international agreement for albatrosses, which also has an action plan annexed to it. At some moment, the national plan, the international agreement walked parallel. And then in 2013, we did the obvious, right? And we joined both documents, the National Action Plan for Albatrosses, which is the national version for the Action Plan of the International Agreement of Albatrosses. Therefore, implemented this national plan, we are abiding to the international agreement for the conservation of albatrosses. I think this is a really good example and has been working very well. I want to talk a little bit more about how our national action plans influence the international policies. Starting from the cetaceans national plans that encourage the sustainable use, the sustainable tourism activities, and recognize this as a tool of conservation. The National Commission took to the last meeting, the Florianopolis document, built in partnership with the Humpback Whale Project. So the International Commission would recognize the importance of our efforts to conserve the cetaceans. This declaration was approved by the plenary of the UN and the plenary of the International Commission, and recognizing the importance of the sustainable use. That really let the Japanese down because they're trying to resume hunting, and they were so frustrated that the International Commission recognized the importance of conservation that they abandoned the commission. Now the main risk that happened in the commission, which was the Japanese, ended. Currently, they only hunt whales in their territorial waters, and therefore reducing the number of whales captured in 2/3. Currently, only 1/3 of the whales are captured by the Japanese. They use the excuse of research, but in the end, this all protected more whales. Generally speaking, the pioneer projects of Biomar Networks, supporting and influencing legislation, they end up becoming an example for other places and vice versa. Other countries that advanced in specific legislation for certain species, they also influence Brazilian legislation. So the fight for conservation is global, and because it's only one ocean, especially talking about species that migrate throughout the globe. Tati, do you want to say anything else? Want to highlight the importance of the Biomar Network in these international forums? It's a really good question. So we're able to influence international policies strongly, mainly through the results of our research. Using the Albatroz example again, we approach fishing vessels and demand of them the necessary measures to avoid capturing the seabirds and that they fish sustainably and safely. After we present these results for the Brazilian government, so they can create legislation over taking care of all the necessity for the legislations. And after that, we present these results in international forums, not only in the agreement for conservation of albatross, but also in other international commissions, like a regional organization that regulates the fishing of tuna all over the Mediterranean. So there's a change of scale. And presenting our research data, we are able to influence the recommendations of such organizations that are able to influence the decision-making process inside countries. So our work really is over the Brazilian limits. We offer subsidies that will turn into recommendations that are binding to legislation in several countries that operate all over the Atlantic Ocean. It's really important to highlight that this not constrict to the Brazilian territory, to the Brazilian territorial waters, and the result of our research is they have a global impact.
Vou passar então. Opa, Flávia. Desculpa interromper, gente. Na verdade, eu queria puxar esse gancho da Tati, mas falar um pouco da pergunta anterior, porque
I'd like to talk a little bit about the last question that I wasn't able to comment about the endangered species. I was ashamed to ask to speak without being able to turn on the sound. I'd like to talk about the network as a whole and the research that has a global impact. Talking about the coral environment, because I can talk about endangered species of coral only because it's Coral Vivo, it's an ecosystemically project. There is a broader approach. Our project are involved in pancoros, which work with 52 species. So we embrace pancoros. And when we want to mention numbers, endangered species, we try to talk about this ecosystemically approach, which in my opinion encompasses species like the grouper and others, because there is interconnectivity between the environments, reef corals and the fish. So there are 18 areas of pancoros where Coral Vivo project works, some indirect and some directly. But we're still having baby steps about our knowledge, in terms of our knowledge of the areas, about the environment and the species. And a flagship example is the discovery of a new reef environment in the south of Bahia, near the Albatroz archipelago, which is Royal Charlotte Bank. It's an action focus of Pancorão. It was an unknown environment until recently. And only a recent expedition was able to describe it and find it's a similar environment to Albatroz, a very rich area. We are overwhelmed by the size of the cover of the coral cover. It's a little bit deep, so people had to scuba dive 60 meters, and they reported that they had never seen a similar environment in the Brazilian coast. Just want to highlight that we're on the first steps of getting to know the environments and the endangered species in this region. There are 11 endangered species in this region, and there are still many things to be discovered. Thank you. There are many questions. We're selecting a few so we don't pass 11 p.m. If your questions are not answered live here, they're going to be answered via chat or via email later. Next question, to Gregório from Petrobras. Petrobras sponsors other projects relevant to the marine environment that are part of the Biomar Network. As the projects that make up the network, how are the projects that make up the network selected? Are there criteria for this participation of a project in the Biomar Network? If there are, what are these? Very good question. So we can talk at length about the program, the social environmental program for Petrobras. Was established 10 years ago, and there was a voluntary investment from Petrobras around 1 billion reais. I'm not bragging about these numbers, but I'm just trying to show how committed Petrobras is to social environmental development. So, and we consider that these figures, they multiply. After the projects are developed, there are 4 axes: education, social, environmental development, forests, and oceans. We invest a lot in oceans, covering almost the entire Brazilian coast, starting in the north with the aquatic mammals of Amazon, and the northeast, more related to sea animals. Here in the mangroves in Rio de Janeiro, near São Paulo, there is a Atenção às Águas project, Biomar in north of Paraná, and the Australian frank whale down south. There is a very robust investment in oceans. We try to combine these projects with the formation of the Brazil, and we try to be consistent all over the Brazilian coast. There is a public bid, and there are participants of the civil society in a very transparent way. There is a website advertising the program these days. I'm gonna put the link for the site on the chat here. There you can find the description of all the projects and the grant opportunities, whether they are for public selections or you subscribe to our database of projects. So if you have a transforming proposal, please apply to our grants. I'd love to advertise the other networks we participate, the Biomar Network. We also are part of a Redagua, where Group and Coral Vivo projects are part as well, working in an integrated way in the Guanabara Bay, starting on the hills, protecting the hydrographic, the mangroves, and the hydrographical bay. Recently, we have been developing a reference network of forests. So our investment is consistent. We think that forests are fundamental for carbon trapping. This carbon that's not absorbed by the forest go to the ocean and therefore causing negative impacts on these other environments. So I invite you guys to get to know these projects. And Jonas, I would like to say that 11, 12, and 13 of July, Redagua will hold the first environmental seminar in Niterói, and I'd like to invite you all. Thank you, Gregório. Next question is to Ana. Maybe you can add to what Gregório said. Ana, you mentioned 50 projects supported by Petrobras Social Environmental Program. Do they work like the Biomar Network? How can we get to know more about these?
Eu vou primeiro só
Ana. Adding to what Gregório said before, to join Biomar, the network started in the past organically with people and projects that had some things in common and a similar action line, and it started formally in 2006 with the participation of Petrobras and other organs. Since then, we have evaluating case by case the projects that want to join the Biomar Network. Those criteria are not very strict. They are flexible, but we would like to prioritize and reference projects that are awarded or recognized by their work, acting in these different axes that we commented already, and that are that work nationwide. And of course, projects that work with marine conservation. So the second question is, as Gregório mentioned, there are 25 environmental projects. There is a forest axis and the ocean axis. Talking about the ocean axis, almost of them work with all the axes that we talked about here. They have some type of interconnection and they have a similar work. They work with public policy, environmental education, and when we go to a more grassroots level, the social environmental education focus on the first infancy. All of them have something in common, but they also have their uniqueness according to the species they work with and the region the region they work at and how they were conceived. If you want more information about the projects, just access our website, click on the social environmental icon where there are all the information for the project, and on the social network use the hashtag Parcerias Petrobras. Let me just add something, John. Anna mentioned 50 projects, but there is a dynamic portfolio. There are projects ending, new projects coming in, and we expect to expand this portfolio to 90 projects by the end of the year, and encompassing investments in over 300 regions over the 30 years, and we're expecting to expand this portfolio, as I said, first of all, because of the sustainability view of the company, and because of this robust work of the Biomar Network, as I mentioned before, that it inspires and motivates us to advancing social environmental conservation. Thank you, Ana. Thank you, Gregório.
Acho que a gente já falou pouco, mas acho que a gente podia talvez listar.
About the next question, that people already touched it. It's a question for everybody. Are the projects restricted to Brazilian territory? How are the conservation partnerships and with international NGOs and researchers? Dudu from Baleia Jubarte, from humpback whale, and the Albatroz project already mentioned some examples. So maybe we could have something else to show the importance of other projects. I can start. Yesterday, Meros do Brasil only in Africa, and for the next years, we are expecting to find the conservation and better understanding the species in all over the region of its occurrence around the globe, worldwide. I can talk about the humpback whale a little bit. I'm sure that all the members of the Biomar Network work closely with science, and there are still so many knowledge to be generated that we partnership with a series of universities that develop specific studies. There is a veterinary partnership that study pathologies of some animals. There are, with PUC Rio Grande do Sul, there are genetic studies, and I believe that we can establish the international partnerships. We work on the observation project with the climate change and changing whales, where we collect samples of whales fat, and we forward this to this university in Australia, and we make a comparative study evaluating the nutritional or the diet of the whale. So as we can explain, a huge number of deaths of humpback whales in the Brazilian coast last year, and we also identified a similar phenomenon in other places of the world, and we learned that the reason was much more related to the diet, where they ate, than a local problem here. The back of the whale, it's like a fingerprint. So there is a happy whale system where you can put a picture of a whale tail, and it's going to be compared with other people all around. So international cooperation is really important, so we can get more information in migrating animals. The next example is from the Albatroz Task Force program. international program maintained by BirdLife International. We were part of this program for 16 years. This is a network that aim to find investigation with fishing. It involves Africa, Namibia, and other countries from the South Cone of from South America, Chile, Ecuador, and Peru, and the Pacific Ocean. Recently, we have worked, this program has been finished, but this is still part of our reality. It's not, we continue working in synergy with these colleagues, trying to get to know the interaction with the birds, interaction with fishing, and mitigation measures to reduce the problems. The agreement itself for international conservation has a grant program, or secondment program, as they call it. They foster interchange of professionals among international exchange of professionals. I worked in the headquarters of the international program. Kai also worked in Cambridge, England, where that is where they have a good relationship. Patrícia from ICMBio also worked in Cambridge. Now, person working from the international collection of the NEI are going to New Zealand. So we get to know how they put the protection list, the animals there, and we can get to know how to do it. So we foster this type of exchange and international partnership.
Mais alguém? Ok, então vou passar para a próxima e acredito que a última pergunta para a gente conseguir fechar dentro do tempo.
So it's going to be the next and last question. It's for everybody again. How does Biomar Network want to include the youth participants in the project for these next 10 years? Can I answer this, Jonas, please? It's a common practice inclusion, right, of the teams that participate of Jovem Mar project. We see this intensively in Fernando de Noronha for the Spinning Dolphin project. The first is insert is we research, community development, development of public policies without interfering in the organic life of the collective Jovem Mar Noronha. As Fernando de Noronha is the only Brazilian territory, essentially oceanic, that where there are only civilians living in the middle of the ocean. There are a series of difficulties and problems related to sustainability due to resource limitations. So we try to involve as much as possible local residents in our projects, and the young from Jovem Mar Noronha collectives are hired directly and are stimulated to go to the university, especially in ecology, oceanography, biology. This is very nice because they are Fernando de Noronha residents, and we think they're a very important category And this project is really important for the migrational control, and they're also directly contributing to the reduction of the artificial popular growth of Fernando de Noronha. We're not against outsiders from Fernando de Noronha, but the main activity of Noronha tourism absorbs human resources and mainly more specialized people coming from the continent, and this number of people coming from the continent has been increasing constantly and increasing the permanent population of Fernando de Noronha, which now are around 8,500, 9,000 pesos. In the beginning of the project, there were 1,500 people living in Fernando de Noronha, and they'll still have the same logistics capacity. So we're trying to involve the people from Jovem Mar directly by hiring them after they get professional education, and also stimulating them to act as local actors and local stakeholders for the social environmental changes that are very necessary in Fernando de Noronha. We are out of time. Let me just talk a little bit about this. I was dying to answer this question. This was asked by Iago, which participates in Jovem Albatroz Collective. I'm very happy to answer him because this collective is always coordinated by former participants like Rafael Heróis, who today is a PhD in USP, and now Thais is coordinating. Thais Lopes is the current coordinator of the project. So we keep trying to absorb this former young participants absorbed by other projects and by other initiatives, and these young people that have incredible history. We produce the videos telling their stories, and this is really incredible. Let me give you a spoiler to you guys, international spoiler, Iago. He's the next member of our big young people network, and together with Group Project, we're gonna organize the Encontro Jovem Mar, which is a national gathering of all the collectives from the Biomar Network. It's a very emotional gathering, and I invite you all to follow us on the social media. Kisses, bye-bye. Bye, kisses, Iago. So that's the end. The questions that weren't answered live, we're going to answer by mail directly to the askers. And as I mentioned before, you can stay tuned to the social media of the projects. Majority of the themes approached here are there already or are going to appear on the social media somehow. Now I give the floor to Elisa to close up the event. Thank you, Jonas. I want to thank you very much for your testimonial. This Jovem Mar gathering, we already organized it online, and it's really emotional. So it's very important. We posted the link of the evaluation of this current event on the chat. It's very important for us, so it's very important for us that you complete the poll. We're going to send the answers to whoever completed the participation form. So if you haven't filled it, I'm going to put the link again here on the chat. Please fill it, because all these people will receive the answers. Because these are the people which we have the contacts. I'm going to give the floor to Jonas again to close up our event for today. And I thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Elise. I'd like to thank all the participants on behalf of Biomar Network. such an honor for us to participate in this moment of humanity, what's happening now in Lisbon, this decade beginning right now, and the role of the Biomar Network together with Petrobras to reach the next decade's objectives. So I thank so much all the participants, all the audience, and it was a pleasure to be here with you guys this morning. Thank you so much.